family, it's your girl Nathalie Nelson Parker, and welcome to another edition of World Changer Wednesday,
Hey.
where we are highlighting amazing nonprofit and small business leaders who are making major impact in the world through their mission, through their purpose, through their vision of changing communities. And I'm so excited. This is a very personal episode for me. Many people know that I have the privilege to mentor a lot of people. And I say the biggest flex you can have in the world is not how much money you make, not even like what you do, but how you pour into people. And the way that they excel beyond you or even what they think. And so for that, y'all gotta give it up for I don't even feel like I should call you Mentee anymore.
Are we colleagues now?
My brother.
Yes.
My brother, Kylan Pew, who I've had the privilege to just have a front row seat to all of the amazing things that you do and are doing. Entrepreneur, spiritual leader, leader in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, reconciliation, just truly the embodiment of not only changing the world, but curating community in whatever industry you're in.
Yeah.
Which is really a blessing. So introduce yourself to the people.
Yes.
I can say all the things, but I won't right now.
Yeah, so I am super excited to be here. And so Kylan, Kansas boy through and through, right?
And I be forgetting that sometimes.
Like definitely a Kansas boy, born and raised. And so making my way here, proud millennial to the core, except for the technology piece. Like me and technology, we be struggling. Like I love the socials, but beyond that, me and the millennials, like we struggle a little bit because I didn't.
We getting there.
We're getting there though, you know.
Getting better.
And so like I said, founder curator of the Believers Outlet as well as the Black Seminarians Table, and the newly minted Doctor.
Not the fake doctor,
you know,
like real
like earned, baby. And so I think that's kind of outside of the business and things of that nature. That has just been my passion, right? Has been education, is just making sure that I am properly schooled in the things that I needed. And even that journey into a doctoral program was just innovative, if you would.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about growing up in Kansas. And I met you fresh out of your HBCU experience. For those who know me know I'm a huge HBCU advocate and mentor to HBCU students because of just how impactful I believe they are on the formation of particularly African American leaders. Yes. To live transformationally. So tell us a little bit about your life in Kansas and how did you make it to your HBCU? Like what was that like?
Yeah. So look, long story real short. I grew up in Kansas, like I said, church boy, with my mom and
what kind of church?
Church. The majority of my grounding was Baptist, and then later in life we shifted to like a non-denominational, but kind of an apostolic, sprinkling in there.
So you was well churched.
Well churched, very well churched. And what's crazy is that the church was the first space that gave me the option to be creative. And so I don't want to say that the church was like my first stage, but a lot of people struggle with church, like accepting them and affirming their gifts and callings and things of that nature. And that's just never really been my story. Like I've always just been kind of the exception to the rule, if you would, that if I could dream it, if I could imagine it, the church gave me space, funding, and support to do it, right? And so that was kind of like where I found, like I always was the oddball, right? Like, and I was always the one kind of like leading or having to do it or something like that. And it was always kind of different. Like people looking at me like, you want to do what? Like, like I never forget, like I also think that a large portion of that was because a lot of my passion was around the arts. And so if you can sing and you can dance and you can do all those types of things, like that is a lot of the foundation of church and the worship experience, right? So it's like, oh, if you want to create and do that thing, like, then that's kind of what that was. And so going through that program, but I would say though, I was never in a church where education was pushed. right? A lot of people in the settings of the churches that I was at, like they finished high school and that was kind of it. And so I was one of the first who like finished high school, went on to college. And I went on to like a 2-year JUCO first and did that, completed that, then came back home and like jumped head first back into ministry because it was familiar. It was kind of like my playground of sorts, right? Like that's kind of where I built my relationship with God, was through creativity and through the arts of that nature. And so fast forward, I'm going to these predominantly white institutions and they're great, they're good. They see my gifting and they platform me because of those giftings. But again, I never had like a strong academic pushing, right? Like my mom reared that in us at a young age, but like I was just never, it was kind of like up to you, right?
Yeah.
And so now being at these large institutions where you're really just a number, like I was able to pledge and like do the things and just all the things of that nature, but academically I was suffering and nobody was asking that question, right? And so nobody was like, are you going to class? Like, what's the grades looking like? Like we see the transcript. Like nobody was really caring about that. And so it was through
Why do you think that was?
Because I think a lot of people just operated under the assumption that I had it together.
Yeah.
I'm also one of the strong friends, and so people typically don't check on the strong, right? And so I think there are various different layers in that, right? And even when I was on academic probation and had one class, like I was showing up to campus with a backpack, you know, kicking it.
Chilling, strolling,
you know what I'm saying? It's so, eventually my fraternity did find out about, you know, what was happening or whatever. And one of the old heads, Dr. Cranford, I would never forget it, and I'm forever grateful for him. Like, he kind of pulled me to the side and was like, yeah, this ain't it. He was like, I got a connection. I have a frat brother. And at the time, I was like leading youth and young adult ministry at the church I was at. And one of my youth had graduated and went to Wiley College, now Wiley University. And so, you know, and so they were actually coming into town. The fraternity was bringing the choir into town for an MLK celebration. And I was the minister chosen to like open the church for them to we were feeding them and stuff like that. So I meet them or whatever. And then my fraternity brothers come and I'm like, what y'all doing? What's going on? He was like, yeah, I need to introduce you to Dr. Hayes, who was the director of the choir. He was also a fraternity brother, had a conversation. He was like, yeah, come in here and sing. We went to Sanctuary, I sung right there on the spot. He was like, well, I would like to offer you a full ride scholarship to attend. And I was like, this man playing big games with me. Like,
to sing in the choir?
Like, you gonna offer me a full ride scholarship to sing, like what I've been doing my whole life?
Exactly.
And so sure enough, like I said, that was that January around MLK Day. And he invited me out to the campus later in the year. I did that, and then that fall of 2013, I transferred and went to Wiley College, and that's where I graduated from.
How significant was the change in environment from going to a PWI to an HBCU?
So it was the first time that I seen myself. And it was also the first time that I kind of, and I mean, I be who I be. It was the first time that I like encountered black people who was better than me too.
Ooh.
So it gave me something to,
like excellence.
like it gave, and obviously, like I said, I had my academic struggles, but in the creative sense and things of that nature, like I was a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
And so then to go to Wiley, where it was like literally everybody had been through the choir on this same scholarship that I was given, right? And a lot of people, that's how they get to Wiley, but then they find other avenues, and that's how they stay and things of that nature. And so I was like blown away, but it also gave me something to like, okay, I got to get better. Like I got to work. Like I can learn from other people now who from different places. Like a lot of my influences came from like Little Rock, Arkansas, Gary, Indiana, Chicago, like these people who just were doing things on a way. But it was also crazy because like they kind of second guessed this little boy from Kansas, right? And I was able to kind of come in and put my stank on it, you know what I'm saying? And they was like, hold on, wait a minute, you know? So yeah, it was really, really dope. And in that environment is really what kind of lit the entrepreneurial fire in me. Because if you're on an HBCU campus, everybody got to hustle. Like from selling plates, haircuts, like you walk through an HBCU dorm, like everybody got something that they're doing and that they're hustling on. And so that's when t-shirts and event planning kind of became my thing. And that's where my hustle started, so.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about how your experience in the church with your fraternity, your educational path of really being diverse, going from a junior college to a PWI to a HBCU. What about those experiences really birthed not just your entrepreneurial journey, but really your mission? So share a little bit about the Believers Outlet and your, I like to call them MVPs, your mission, vision, and purpose, because like I said earlier, you embody that in such a real palatable way. Like, there's no meeting Kylan and not understanding that we about to be in community and intentional relationship. Like, it ain't a joke.
Most definitely. And so for me, like I said, growing up, community was something that was always major for me. And a lot of it was because not only was I kind of like the outlier, but I wanted like genuine community. Like, I wanted people that I could hang with and that I could roll with and that I could like do these things with. And so it was through, so the Believers Outlet was initially started as a t-shirt. I had did some original music, and I felt like I was called to do that. I had wrote some original music, and just in my sense of like watching other artists, I was like, I need to build a household name for myself. So I need a brand, I need t-shirts, so I'm talking to my mama like, oh my God, I need a t-shirt. My first t-shirt was a simple shirt that said, God works, I'm living proof. And before I even had a theology background and stuff, like, I just felt like God was always telling me like that I was an unpublished book of the Bible. And so that, like, God was just like, trust me, walk with me. Like, and I would align with certain characters and things of the nature of the Bible. And so that God works, I'm living proof kind of became my tagline. And no tea, no shade. Like, when I launched, the t-shirts hit and the music didn't, right?
This is a good example of learning to pivot.
Learning to pivot, you know what I'm saying? And I was like,
meeting audience need.
Hey, I was like, okay, cool, got it. You know, that I can make that work, right? And so people were just like blowing me up about these t-shirts. And it's crazy how like the t-shirts then became a sign of community. Like, as people seen them in the community around Kansas where I ended up launching and then moving to Wiley with the t-shirt, like the t-shirt became like the symbol for the on-campus ministry. Like, they ended up purchasing them. My fraternity had purchased a special order. Like, people started wanting it in like their specific colors and things of that nature. And so it became like a sign of community of like, okay, you my people, right? Like, and we can have a certain type of conversation. And so it was through those journeys that kind of happened. But I think also what was also happening that I experienced in church and things of that nature was like, I was growing up as like a young adult and things of that nature, and the church really didn't know what to do with us, right? Like, when I was younger, I remember there being things like the singles ministry, right? Or like the youth, but like once you hit that, once you kind of like age out of that youth thing, a lot of churches were like spreading, like trying to extend that that young adult age. Like, oh, it's 25.
It's
oh,
40.
It's 40. Oh. And it's like, huh? Like, how y'all just gonna keep eating on because y'all don't know what to do with this group of people, right? And so then what happened beyond the t-shirt, like, I just started doing these events, right? Bowling nights and open mic nights. And I was able to connect with, there was a business in Marshall, Texas, where I was going to school called Musicians Unlimited. And like I said, everybody on my campus was like musically inclined. And this was basically like a music studio, and he had instruments and all these types of things. So I started hosting events there for people to come together and just like be in community creatively, and not only sharpen each other's skills, but to just literally just be, right? Like to just creatively, musically be themselves and find themselves amongst genuine community. And so that was kind of the matriculation of that, and then moving that back into church settings. Like I said, a lot of churches just didn't know what to do with this group of people. So I was able to partner with churches and be like, hey, like, I have this program, like, can you just plug your people in here? And a lot of churches was just like, dope, like, we don't have to do the programming around this age group. Like, we can send them there, and then we trust what you're talking, like the conversation that's happening. So
there's so many good things, so many good nuggets around organically, how you just moved with what the need is. I feel like a lot of nonprofit and small business leaders get stuck on this is how it has to be, rather than being open to what are exactly the needs.
Definitely.
And how do I solve those issues, those problems, and provide for the needs that people are having.
Yes.
And I feel like because you are so open to not only your mission, vision, and purpose, but the needs of people, the resources and everything that you need opened up the way. What would your advice be for that person who, and go ahead and be transparent and tell us how long this journey of Believers Outlet, now your newest brand, Black Seminarians Table, and we're gonna get a tour of Kylan's co-working space. Talk about like all of the kind of transitions that you've had to get here for that person that's kind of feeling stuck. Like, I'm 5 years in, I'm done. It's not feeling like it's doing what it needs to do.
So I started the Believers Outlet, again, like I said, as a t-shirt in 2013. And didn't have the Believers Outlet language then, right? But if anybody remembers that time and age, and if you was a church kid, you remember Christian bookstores. And they was just like all the rave, like you wanted to be there. And then that was also the time where like the Christian bookstores kind of like started off adding the coffee shops in.
I was just thinking that.
Like they started adding the coffee shops in and stuff.
You could listen to CDs?
Right, like all that kind of stuff.
Our age.
Just a little bit, but it's
Friends,
okay.
A CD.
You know, right.
A compact disc.
You know, you had the little walkie-talkie and you had to like hold it real still. But, and so like when I started like crabbing, I was like, man, like what could this really be? Like how could I really make this something? And so my imagination took me to create and craft this space that was like, I always said it was like Starbucks meets Dave & Buster's, right? In my brain of like, where could people go and have community and like create and do these things, but then also like have fun, right? Like I could host, you know, organizations and groups who wanted to have youth nights or, you know, kickbacks or whatever the case may be in a safe, dry space, right? Because I think one of the other things that I've now leaned into in my calling and purpose is people dealing with addictions and things of that nature. And so even to just go out with a group of friends, it's like you're met with like alcohol and things of that nature. And so how could I just create that space intentionally for people to not even have to worry about those things? And so that was my initial dream. Started in 2013, didn't know how, where, didn't even have the language to truly articulate the fullness of it. So go through Wiley, you know, I'm having these events, doing those types of things. But again, amongst all of this, the t-shirts are really what's hitting. And I'm picking up the t-shirts, I'm putting down the t-shirts because it's a lot, right?
Because you do all aspects.
I'm doing all aspects at that point. Like I was working with vendors, trying to get stuff done and people dipping and dodging you, misprinting stuff, you know what I'm saying? And all that's your money going in. And so I was picking it up, putting it down. And then it was like, every time I would put it down and try to walk away from it, I would like see somebody in a t-shirt. And I'm like, I would see, like, people was holding on, like, y'all, it's people still holding on to the original 2013 release.
I'm not gonna lie, I love the original design.
I don't even print it no more.
I'm one of those people.
I don't even print that design no more, and people still be like,
sweatshirt.
So when you gonna run these ones back? Like,
I wouldn't mind.
You know, I need to get on it. And so I was matriculating through that process and things of that nature, and going to, like I said, I got through Wiley, got to seminary, and literally as soon as I got to seminary, met Dean Mosley, met Reverend Sandy, who was working at Gammon, and then they introduced me to you. And immediately, like...
Now, I need you to tell the real story, y'all, because kind of be doing me dirty talking about the first time we met.
Y'all.
This is my work husband.
So, slick. So, long story short, I had came on the campus, and even coming to seminary was never anything that was on my radar.
I think for both of us.
Yeah, like it was never on my radar. Nobody from like my back home has been to seminary.
First of all, for those who don't know what seminary is, like give a little.
Oh, so seminary is like theological education. So like the training ground for Black seminarians, people who are wanting to have a sound theological framework or groundedness foundation, if you would, for the work for them to build up on. Not just people who want to go into pastoring or churching, but even in nonprofit work, things of that nature. So,
and we both are graduates of the epicenter of Black liberation theology.
Come on.
The only
the only
historical Black seminary of the United Methodist Church.
Yes, and the only freestanding Black theological institution. There are 6 total, but we attended the only freestanding.
Yes.
So
Gammon Theological Seminary
at
the ITC.
At the ITC.
In Atlanta, Georgia.
So yeah, got to seminary, and really decided like on a wing. Was at home, and everybody who know when you go home and you have all your stuff and you move back in with your parents after college, everything just live in the living room for a season, right? And my mama finally was just like, look,
you coming or you going?
I love you, but you got to get these bins out my living room, okay? Like the summer that went on, you've been applying. I was applying for jobs. I was going to the library every day, applying for jobs, trying to figure out what was the next step. So mama put her foot down, so I'm in there. I'm like unpacking bins, and I came across a pamphlet for gammon. Don't remember picking it up, like, and I was just like, gammon, huh? And I was like, I think that's that light-skinned man that came and preached at the.
You know? Shout out to D. Mosley.
Shout out to D. Mosley. And I was like, I think that's the. And I called him, was like, hey, da 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 da. Reverend Sandy was like, yo, yeah, woo, go here, fill out the stuff. When you trying to come? And I was like, this fall, if possible. Keep in mind, it's like July. It's the end of July at this point.
No application.
We had to be at school August 16th. I'll never forget. And she was like, well, if you can give me this information, whoop, whoop. And I called my people, the Wichita State, the school I had transferred out of, like I called the VP there that I had made a good relationship with, Dr. Marchand, was like, hey, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Can you got the stuff in. They fast tracked my stuff and was like, hey, we can get you in. And so called Tabitha Rankin, who was the chaplain at Wiley College. And she was kind of the one who was introducing us to seminary in a way. And also that summer, we were invited to be hosts at the Texas Annual Conference. And so that was really my introduction to the United Methodist Church. And I was blown away by all of the auxiliaries and all of the, I'd never seen ministry so full, right? Like it was literally something for everybody. And I was also blown away by the rainbow colored stones, because that's when things were really like bubbling up around full inclusion for the church. And so I remember having a conversation with Tabitha Rankin and LaDonna Galt, who was also a person who worked at the school. And they was like, I think the United Methodist Church has a space for you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
let me see what the seminary
about. So, didn't think about it.
You know what I love about your story? It's like each evolution is simply like, let me see what God finna do.
Let me see.
Let me see.
Let me see.
I would just go ahead.
And my mom can tell you, like, my relationship with God, and like people say like, oh, you got to pray to hear the voice of God. The voice of God for me like has shifted, it's changed. Like I've never really had like that cracking of the sky or experience that people have. And for me, it was really, when I prayed for something like God, it was always the same answer. I told you your gifts will make room for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, Lord, but that ain't, I'm like, but Lord, that ain't telling me if I'm supposed to go to the school or not. Like, I'm trying to figure out like, should I go to Wiley? I told you your gifts will make room for you.
Can you talk a little bit about, and we're taking a little bit of detour, we're going to come back to the story.
Okay.
But I think this is important to hear, especially for people who have like a lot of anxiety about like the future, or even anxiety about their past.
Yes.
About how do you lean into that kind of creative imagination? Because I really feel like that's where your curiosity comes from.
Yeah.
Right? That ability to be like, all right, God gonna be God. Life gonna life, but God is gonna be God.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to curate? Because you've had challenges, you've had trauma, and we don't have to get into that. But for that person who's watching that's like, ain't nobody coming to my school saving me. I ain't pick up a pamphlet. Like, how do I tap into that creative imagination and curiosity that comes from being in a relationship with God?
Yeah. I think a huge portion of it is like you have to give yourself permission to feel the things you're feeling. And then you also like in your prayer time with God, like you have to give yourself permission to play. Play. Because when you begin to play with God, right, and have these like, God, what if we did this? Like, what if this, you know what I'm saying? Like, because a lot of times we go begging for like this specific thing, or like, I want to do this, or but just like play, like, what does it look like if I was to publish a book? Like, what does it look like? But I don't want to do, like, I don't want to be churchy the way these other people is churchy. Like, I don't want to do, like, God, I just feel like you haven't, like, we doing something different over here. And we on a different wavelength that's going to reach another generation of people that need to be. And God was like, okay, cool. Well, like, well, how can we? So it was really play. But then also I feel like a lot of us are so worried about this relationship and not enough with this relationship. and the way that God shows up through the people who are around you and in your life.
Not only the people, but like literally listening to your story at every step, you received exactly what you needed.
Yes. Yes.
Every step, like full scholarship to Wiley.
Yeah.
And your grades was jacked up.
That part.
Then I ain't gonna put all your business. Then you go to seminary because you're like, let's see what he's talking about.
That part.
Got your scholarships there.
Got my scholarships there. Like.
Then you met a beautiful mentor.
So yeah. So I'm moving a group, but my thing would be like to play with God in that thing, and then also to be intentional about the community that you're building and the people who are around you and the way God is showing up in that way. And so to get back on track, we fast forward. I get to seminary. I really had a week to get there. Get to seminary. Literally, I was upset because my parents like literally loaded me up in this Dodge Charger. And my mama was like, all right, we'll see. And I was like,
and mama's here. I'm gonna
like,
get mama's
I didn't know that they would like, because the whole time I'm trying to leave the passenger seat open.
Ma, did you just, is that how you was feeling? You was like, bye boy, I see you next holiday. She's shaking her head.
Like I'm trying to leave the right.
She said it's time.
I'm trying to leave the passenger seat open. You know, you moving stuff out the house. You know how that works.
You had to say, nah, stay, baby.
I'm waiting. Honey, I get out there to the car. Her and my daddy done filled up that passenger. I'm like I'm telling you, this car was filled to the brim. But they sent me on my way or whatever, and I came here. And so Chaplain Rankin had already called ahead and let him know who I was. And so my first week here, Dean Mosley was like, hey, I need you to be the president of my student fellowship. And I was like, what? I don't even know nothing about this. Like,
I'm barely Methodist.
Right. But again, your gifts will make room for
Always.
you. And so it comes with this scholarship. It comes with yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. So since I've gotten to Atlanta, I came to Atlanta in 2016. I've never applied for a job. I've never had to. Everything has literally your gifts will make room for you. And so, and it's been 8 years since I've been here now. And so, like I said, started the business in 2013, seeing the things, so I'm meeting with Dean Mosley and Reverend Sandy. And one day I just happened to go to the office, like literally maybe my first month there. And you're in the office and you are starting the National Network of Young Adults, and you've built out this program, like straight out of seminary, got this opportunity. And I walk in the office like, oh my God, like I want y'all to meet each other. And Kylan, you need to be. And Nathalie just immediately goes into like pitch, like, yeah, I'm doing da-da-da-da, and I'm going to meet with these students, and we're going to have a national network, and we're going to do a conference. And I'm sitting there looking at her like,
who are you?
Girl, what? Like,
hello and goodbye.
Like, you don't know me. Like, okay, it sounds good, but I got something else going on right now. And so literally she was just like, yeah. And I feel like halfway through the conversation, you was kind of like, okay, cool. You was like, well, I'm going to be at Clark tomorrow. I'm going over to Clark tomorrow to speak to some students. Like, if you would like to meet me over there. So I'm like, okay, cool. We exchanged information. And literally, I went to church that morning, didn't really think about it. And then afterwards, I think you texted and was like, hey, I'm going to roll up on them. And I was like, I'm just getting out of church. I'll come through there. And so I literally get to Clark. We sat through the last bit of their service or whatever, because they have service on campus. And then afterwards, the students like literally gathered around her with the chaplain, and Nathalie's talking, and she handed me like these pamphlets. And I like got the pamphlets, and I'm trying to do my, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let me just, And I'm just, we just doing our thing or whatever. And then halfway through her spiel, she's like, yeah, and Kylan is one of our students. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience? And like, just kicks it to me. Keep in mind, I ain't read no brochure.
He's like, what?
So I felt like this was my test, right? And so I was like, hey, y'all, yeah, I'm a first student over at Gammon. I love the NYA, and my experience has just been amazing, networking and meeting other people. I'm super excited about the Lit Conference and what Nathalie is doing. And like, we
didn't even have a name. We just kept saying the conference.
Oh yeah, because we didn't even have Lit at the time. We was like, yeah, I'm so excited for the conference. And from there, like in that moment, she was just like, we kind of looked at each other and was like, this is it. This is it. We can do this. And so, and from that moment on, and I would say because maneuvering through seminary, going through the classes and things of that nature, I was struggling because other people put calls on you, right? And other people put on the things that they feel like you should be doing. But I felt and I knew that God was calling me to something different. And I was just like this pulpit life ain't really like, I had been doing Sunday morning my whole life. right? And so I was
and
really
you're good at it.
I'm good at it. And so
let's not
for
diminish
me,
the
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Like God
And
has
so
blessed you to
yeah. So but I was ready for something other than that, right? And so it was through your mentorship and seeing you like the way you were maneuvering the space and applying for grants and just having some other conversations where I began to look and learned that like through seminary, through your mentorship, like I graduated and learned how to be an entrepreneur, which is not something that you hear people say, right?
say it all the time. Seminary taught me how to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, like it taught me how to be an entrepreneur. And so through that opportunity, like I said, I'm here, I'm building up the t-shirts, Black for the Believers Outlet. Through my master's program, I did my senior capstone, built out the Black Seminarians table, again around building inclusive spaces, intentional community for Black students in theological education, for their voice to be heard in the space, right, and their lived experience. And so was trying to see like, how do these two things come together and like, what do they do? And even longer story short, y'all, graduated from seminary in the midst of the pandemic. I'm the original quarantine class, shout out to class of 2020. And so, but was stuck again, like, what do I do? What am I, you know what I'm saying? And so, but was having conversations with you and with other people and was like, I was going back and forth like, okay, do I need a therapist? Do I need a spiritual direction? Do I need a good business coach? Or do I need to do like this doctoral program? And the pandemic was happening, life was kind of happening. And if people don't remember that time, like George Floyd had happened.
It was
and
height of,
the
like,
height
everything.
of everything was happening. But one of the things that happened with like, and that height of like, people were flooding Black businesses. And so people were like hitting me up, like, oh my God, Kylan, I need a t-shirt, the protest is happening, can you do? And I was just like, like I was like, I'm not doing this right now, like pineapples. Like I'm not ready. And so, but people started like placing custom orders, like, can you do these shirts for this? Can you do these shirts? So that's how I got back into doing t-shirts and things like that, of that nature, picked that up and was just like, okay, God, like there has to be something here. I need to flesh this out. And one thing that I noted about me, like I kind of needed a system and some type of structure.
That was gonna be my next
question.
question.
And so that's how I ended up in the doctor, just to bypass the trauma, right? There was a relationship that went bad and had to leave and all the things. And so then that's how I ended up being in the program and doing the doctoral, because I needed that system to kind of set me up and do that.
Can you talk a little bit, because there are a lot of people who start their nonprofit, their businesses, and it goes great, but they don't have that system or framework. Can you just share with us from the formation of working very closely with NNYA on the design team, doing your doctoral work, your seminary work, what are kind of the key major things you learned framework-wise that helped you to stand this business up in a different way? Because I feel like with each step of your journey of building, establishing, launching, taking off, there are kind of like these key things that you learn that help you to sustain.
Right.
Especially
for solopreneurs, right?
Yeah.
Like the major thing that I learned, and I feel like hands down, like I got to give all credit to you on teaching me like the importance of automation, right? And like if you are a solopreneur and you're doing everything, like how much in my business, how much in this system can I automate, right? Like for me to create a social media post and then be trying to come up with a caption and post, like that was taking up so much time. And you was just like, well, you need to automate this stuff. Like, and you taught me that as an intern for you doing social media through NNYA, right? And so learning how to automate my systems and the back end and things of that nature was one of the important things that I learned. One of the other frameworks and giftings that I learned was like standing in my truth. And that's not something that's tangible,
really don't
but like
spend enough time being authentic and having authentic relationships. That's the real network thing, for real.
Yes, like because your community is out there and they're waiting on you and they're looking for a you. And so the more, a lot of times, like we craft our businesses and we try to look like other people or sound like other people because we see where their brands are, but people are waiting for the way in which you are going to say it. And so that was a really, really major thing. And then I think also the way in which, like, I mean, to keep it real, like the funding is out there, right? And a lot of the funding is out there, and there are different ways to get it. Like, you don't always have to be breaking your neck or showing up in a way and things of that nature, and slanging the t-shirts out the trunk of my car at conferences. Like, y'all, I was a vending fool before the pandemic. Like, I was showing up at every conference, like vending and slinging shirts and trying to make this thing happen. And so, but that, I think those were some of the key things for me that has really helped me stand this business up. And then one of the things that helped the business to get to the structure of which it is now was the Do Good X accelerator program. And I have been seeing the Do Good X accelerator program.
You got stuck with me again.
Like, right. So, and this is, y'all, this is literally how things work out. Like
I am
life,
the coach for that.
right? Like life had just been lifing, right? And so Nathalie and I, like, we had kind of been missing each other, and like, you know, we check in, like if we're gonna be in each other's city, we'll check in. But I'm like, yeah, I didn't even tell you that I was applying for the accelerator. Like, I applied for this accelerator program or whatever.
You called me, you was like,
I get to that thing.
"You
I
not
said, girl, you a coach for the program? So right
Here we
again,
go
boom,
again.
look at her in her face. And so went through this 10-week accelerator, and that really was what gave me, you talk about the MVPs, the mission, vision, purpose, like they really forced and honed in on, like, because a lot of us think like, oh, well, I got to get the LLC and I got to get, and the honest to goodness, like that's the easy part of it. Like, as long as you got the money and stuff, like that's the easy part of it, is getting the LLC, setting up those governmental structures, getting the EIN numbers, all that, like that's easy peasy. But they helped me, like, what is your MVP? Like, what are you really trying to do? And how do you, understanding that, right? And so for me, I've been having the Believers Outlet since 2013. It's now 2024. I just launched the co-working space in January. So that's a decade. That's 10 years, right? And so had I would have given up after year 1, after year 5, after year 7.
And you know what I love,
like,
too? You got a little money.
So yeah, and so went through this accelerator, did the pitch competition, and so again, when I started, nobody was talking about co-working spaces. We didn't kind of have that language, and so I was really looking at, again, building this intentional community, creating space for people, thinking about like life post-pandemic, like, and then also my community. I had stopped doing events, right, and so my community was asking like, when you gonna do events? When you gonna do this? Or like for my birthday, I would do gatherings and stuff like that. And my friends would be like, Kylan, you need to have like just the community, the people that you bring. Like, it's always a vibe, right?
We need some place to belong, believe, and become.
Right? And
Which
so
are the
tenants, if you would. Yeah.
Believers Outlet.
And so I was able to craft that in that space, and then got this idea like, oh my gosh. Because one of the other things that I had seen, I think right before the accelerator started, was some gentlemen who were some Black business owners who were meeting in a Starbucks, which people do all the time. But they were harassed and were kicked out of a Starbucks and weren't able to.
Viral moment,
It was a viral moment. And I was just like, well, where are the spaces? Like, and I was also thinking about like accessibility. Right, like I was thinking about things as far as full inclusion for the LGBTQ plus community, and gender neutral restrooms, and Black and brown people being safe, you know, to be in the space and have a thing. And then I was like, cost prohibitive nature, so I was looking at all of these things, and obviously initially I was like, oh, maybe a coffee shop, and maybe, but I don't know nothing about coffee. Like, Dunkin's my best friend, and I'm a drive-through. Like, I was just, that's just not my calling, right? And so came up with came like, oh, co-working space. Started looking at some other things and going through the coaching and stuff like that. And the average co-working membership in Atlanta was like $175. There are a couple of programs who have lower, like a 50, 75, through some various programmings and things of that nature, but the average person was paying around $175 for their membership, and obviously that wasn't us for the most part, right? And so even Atlanta has The Gathering, which is amazing. So I was looking at their thing, but they consider themselves a country club, right? And so I was like, okay, how do I do this? How do I build this inclusive community? And one of the things is I was like really diving deep into what am I trying to do. I was given the language of articulating. I'm trying to combat the epidemic of loneliness and isolation.
Yeah, especially
for entrepreneurs, for people of color, for people within the LGBTQ plus community, because post-pandemic, all these jobs that are work from home or hybrid, like we just don't have that intentional community. And then also creating a co-working space gives me the opportunity, like I have a venue, right? Like I can host events, I can do all of these types of things. And so trying to piece these things together, ended up getting a partnership with Neighborhood Church Atlanta, who allowed me the opportunity to pilot the co-working space, which we're wrapping up our pilot now, the end of May. And so they gave me the space and I was able to do that. And then I got the
partnership.
Right. The partnership, again, like I keep telling y'all.
You ain't got to pay for everything.
You ain't got to pay for it.
Like, a little bit about that, because there's a lot of people that's like, I want to, I have to, they don't know. Can you talk a little bit about like the power of partnership and relationship and how you've been able, and I don't want to say leverage because I don't believe it's leveraging. I think it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
How do you kind of pitch these ideas or create these partnerships?
Yeah, because a lot of people are doing the same thing, right? Like in this day and age, like there's really not much new under the sun, right? We're just innovating the way in which we are approaching different problems. And so one of the problems that I knew within this accelerator, because they was like, well, where are you going to get the space and where are you going to, and I was just like, me having a church background, I was just like, you know how many churches I'm in that sits throughout the week?
And they want
something, like they want to engage community. They want to try to do something more. And so if it can offset their overall costs by allowing a company to come in and rent or whatever the case may be. And so just pitching that, hey, like I see you have this space. I've been in the space a couple of times. I was wondering if there would be some opportunity for some partnership here. This is my product. This is what I'm trying to launch. And this is the benefits not only for me, but for your community, right? And I knew that Neighborhood Church was a space where they already had a lot of community groups and things of nature that were coming through the space. They were centrally located in a spot that's like easily walkable and public transportation. The community that I'm already trying to engage was already in this vicinity for the most part, or just a MARTA ride, a quick drive to get to it. And so we had that conversation and that partnership was birthed, right? And they were just like, oh yeah, like we can make this happen. Like, and like I said, through the pitch competition, won the money with the pitch competition. I got the Community Choice Award. And so, which was ironic because I build community, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I build community. And so it was perfect. And on Facebook Marketplace, right? Like trying to find the furniture, trying to find the things, and linked up with a lady who her business she had an ice cream shop, had 3 different locations here in Atlanta, and the ice cream shop didn't make it through the pandemic. And she was just like, yo, I got 3 different spots. I can take you to all 3 of them spots. You can pick what you need, and we'll work it out. And I'm like, for real?
Ooh, if that ain't a testimonial, God will give you everything you need.
But a lot of it also comes with, again, the conversation.
Ooh.
And a lot of us, like, we go into these spaces and we don't care about other people. We don't care about, you know, what, like, it's just, okay, I'm here to pick up these shares. Like, here you go, girl, I already Venmo'd you the money. Like, you know, I could have went in like, okay, let me get these shares. I'm in a rush. But I was like, oh my God, like, I see you have other stuff here. Like, and she was like, yeah, we'll do it. But she got to talking, telling me a little bit about her story. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, so your business didn't make it? Like, it's because this is my first time doing brick and mortar. Dukedex, I was the second brick and mortar that they had ever, so it was new territory for them, trying to coach someone and with the other coaches and people of that nature post-pandemic, right? And so it was new territory for us all. And so I was like, there's something different than just having a virtual business and now having a brick and mortar business. And so I was like, you know, do you mind giving me some like tips? Like, what do you think were the things or whatever? And she was just like, you know, I think we expanded too quickly. It was great. And she was like, then there just wasn't a plan. Like no one's seen a pandemic coming. Like no one's seen those things coming. And we thought that we were going to hold on to some other things or whatever, and just life changes. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was like, she was like, why do you ask? And I was able to share with her. She's like, oh my God, I think that's so amazing. And she was like, you'd be surprised the amount of people. There was one that was in this vicinity where we are, and the amount of people who would come, and like they would get an ice cream cone, but then they would stay for like 3 to 4 hours just to have somewhere to work, right? And so we were just able to again glean that information, walk through that, site with her. I did a lot of visits with like public libraries and things of that nature, because that was also one of the spaces. But again, a lot of those spaces were not accessible in a way, and then they also were not fully welcoming, particularly, right, of Black and brown folks and things of that nature. And so with the security guards or the police and things of that nature that they had. And so I was like, how do I do this in a space for us, by us? And so
that's so good. We're gonna take a little tour.
Yeah.
And get like a little breakdown. But can you talk about your book, Belong, Believe, and Become, and kind of share like your final nugget, like for that person that's like, okay, Dr. Kylan Pew, okay, all the degrees and all the businesses, and you know, your stuff is popping, you got all this money to do your events, your conferences, your partnerships. What's the nugget that they can take away? And if you have not, Kylan's going to share his website, you need to get this book. What I love about your book is it's more of a journal, but what I love about it is the inward inspection and exploration that helps us to really be in community with God and ourselves in order to better be in community with others. So you got to get his book. You got to get his book. But what's your final nugget? What's your nugget that you can say about the legacy that you're building here? And for that person that's like, I want to do the stuff that Kylan's doing, but I just need that one thing to get me over to that next level. And while you're thinking, I have to say the thing that you probably won't say. You give a lot of credit to me about being in your life, but I have to give you credit for sticking around when I pushed and challenged you in ways that annoyed the hell out of you. As you're thinking.
Y'all.
Because I don't want people to walk away and talk about, oh, they are so great. Look at all of that. But there were necessary times when you're building something that you have to confront things about yourself. All of us do.
Yes.
And to see that you never stop. You put your foot on gas even when you pulled over. I want to give you credit for that.
Thank you.
I love you. I'm so proud of you.
Love you too. My final nugget. Oh, Jesus. I mean, it's to believe his outlet. Don't stop believing. My final nugget for the people will probably be the inward work. But definitely be like to do the work. Yeah, and that's why this book was so important for me, because like I wrote this in the pandemic. A lot of us were in isolation, and it was needed because I was having to have a lot of conversations with myself that I wasn't prepared to have, but I'm glad that I was able to have, right? And so a lot of us, we think about the work that we have been called to do or that we want to do, and we don't think holistically about that thing, right? And so that's one of the things that the book asks is like, you know, what do you feel you've been called to do? And then you journal about that. And then the next day it's like, what physical capacity do you have to be in to do that work? What mental capacity do you have to have? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like what shape holistically do you have to be in?
Do is a reflection of who you be or who you need to become.
Yes.
I love that.
And so, if building community, like one of the main questions that I get emails, calls about all the time in the book, one of the journaling prompts one day is, can I be trusted? And people have never been asked. And they were just like, what do you mean? Like, how dare you ask me that question?
Because we don't trust ourselves.
Because we don't trust ourselves. And so the thing about it is, can you be trusted with the thing that God has given you? Right? Can you be trusted with my truth? Can you be trusted with the work that is you know, ahead of you? And I always, I have also grounded my work around Dr. Itihari Ture, who says, build a community strong enough to hold your truth.
Yes.
And so, and it's a process to do that, but that is one of the things that I have done. I have been able to build a community strong enough to hold my truth. And the reality is that at times it gets lonely, right? Like I can't go out with everybody because I'm doing a paper and I can't go here. I gotta swing by for a little bit, then I gotta go. And so, but the reality is that I built a community strong enough to hold my truth. And so I have one of my friends that I met in seminary was the first, like as soon as I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this co-working space, he was like, oh yeah, sign me up, where I'm going. And he was my first, but he stayed on that, and he was my first person, my first member, my first person to come forth. And so I think it's important to have community that not only believe in you and that support you with their words, but also with their actions. And then vice versa, like you also have to show up for other people in the same way,
Absolutely.
right? And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. And then belong, believe, become. And so belonging is because belonging is a natural human instinct. We all desire to have a space to belong or a community to belong to. Believing in my initial intent was definitely about believing in God and the Spirit and that relationship. But as I've journeyed, like God has begun to open me up to see that I need people to believe in themselves, right? Like I need people to do that inward work of believing, and then to become is really like the living out of the thing, and the day by day. And even if day by day gets overwhelming, how am I doing this thing step by step? So.
Awesome.
One thing before we close, she got, what's next on the horizon for Dr. Pew?
So the next thing for me, honestly, is to explore. I am in the brick and mortar, and so we are in the process now of signing the contracts for me to remain in this space. We've made it through the pilot, and so that's successful. And I feel like I'm dating my business all over again. Like I've had it for 10 plus years, but now that it's in this iteration.
Y'all like moved in together.
Right. Like I gotta really, like we need to, we gotta get to know each other. Yeah, because the reality is that it's difficult to now have a brick and mortar, like regardless if don't nobody show up to co-work that day, like I gotta be here at 10 o'clock to open it up.
Yeah.
Right. And some days, like when I'm sitting here by myself, like I'll be like, maybe I can just dip off, and I'm like, but wait, what if somebody come?
Yeah.
But 10 to 7, like I gotta be in the space, right? And so I think the next phase for me is really just like exploring, because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm doctor, I'm spiritual leader, I'm all these things, director of restorative practices is my 9 to 5. And so I wanna explore, because I really want to not only find out, but to create and to continue to have this be in the world of play around the person that I want to be outside of those titles.
Yeah.
Right. And then also to journey into I really have a lot of work that I need to discern for me to see if full-time entrepreneurship is the goal, or if I enjoy having my entrepreneurship as kind of like passion projects.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I think I need to, recently I've been setting with that. I think you and I, we've had some conversations on like, I don't know if like full-time entrepreneurship is like my goal. Like if I want
and
that,
it's not for everyone. And I've been a full-time entrepreneur now for 3 years, but it's been over 7 years of balancing full-time employment.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing to carry. So as you're like discerning the next step forwards, what are kind of like the markers of like these are the things that I'm looking for? Yeah,
so I think the tangible things is income generation. And so making sure that 2023 was the first year that my businesses funded themselves. And so like I didn't have to, like I made sure I got my affairs and my bank accounts in order, right? Got them their own bank accounts and EIN numbers. And didn't have to put any of my personal money over into it. It was crazy. In 2023, I also hosted my first conference, Theology Con, and my mom came and was like, "What you need?" And I was just like, "Nothing. What you mean?
Nothing,
Like we got it."
I already raised 10 G's.
Yeah, I was like, "Girl, we got it. We got sponsors." Like, and she was like, "Oh, what you like? She was used to like, if I got a vision and I'm dreaming it, like." Okay, she gone,
That's that framework working. That's that framework.
And so, I didn't forget what I was even saying, but about
income generation.
Yeah, like the income generation is definitely a thing. Like I want to get the businesses to a point of like to be making a consistent amount every on a monthly basis, and then I think also diversifying income streams is a real thing. Like I said, I have the physical brick and mortar now, and so I need to get back. I need to pick back up the T-shirts and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And then also, I think one of the last things is like, just am I having fun? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? And is it something that is enjoying me?
Yeah.
So
I love that. How can people stay connected to you? Where should they go to buy the book?
yeah, so you can go to www.believersoutlet.com, and then also at Believers Outlet on all social media platforms. And you can find the book there, or you can just, for a quick turnaround, you can just get it from Amazon as well. And it's Belong, Believe, Become, the Believer's Journal, or you could just type in my name on Amazon and it'll pop right up for you.
Awesome. All right, Kylan, thank you. Thank y'all for tuning in. Stay, because in the next video, you'll be able to see kind of how Kylan's beautiful brain created this physical space.
Yes.
And I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Thanks for rocking with us, World Changer Nation. You already know what to do every Wednesday with Nathalie Nelson Parker. It's World Changer Wednesday, and I'm so glad that you're here.